It couldn't have been that long ago when I first found the new realm. I took my time, of course, savored each delight for as long as I could, and there were so many. A rich weave of cultures across disparate lands. But when I drunk my fill, I knew I had to at last inform my superior of my whereabouts. There was work that needed doing.
Normally I dismiss little Lilith and her vagaries, but this time she had conveyed something of legitimate interest. The denizens failed to impress. Short-lived, short-sighted. No power, no ambition. But they rest on fertile ground. A new realm wherein new magics could be wrought. Even I was able to bring many to willing yoke. Trinkets and trifles. And my own cult formed, mostly beyond direct control. I let it flourish and blossom on its own, while I concentrated on the important work. Those within could accomplish works beyond the capacity of me or mine, filtering and transmuting magics of all four primal forces equally, allowing not just new combinations, but to filter existing magics, removing chaos or good, evil or order. But this was child magic compared to true potential. Great artifacts of reality-shuddering power, affixed to the fabric itself through equally great sacrifice. And so, my faithful gathered dozens, hundreds, and fed them to the depths. 3 would be forged, 1 each for myself and my adopted kin. And with their might, we would finally be able to muster throngs to our banner and challenge the 4 lords of hell.
My elder brother bid me visit some backwater plane on urgent business. I thought about ignoring him, or worse. He'd hate that. But Bale talked me out of it. If he had something in mind for all 3 of us, it was probably important. The place stank. Ichor, bloat, oil, grease, sweat, fat. It reeked. I hated it. Whatever dear brother wanted had better be worth it.
The value was beyond count. 1 for each, imbued with dying screams of hundreds of willing sacrifices, imbuing us each with a concept to call our own.
I sought what I've always sought, to influence, dominate, coerce, control. I took for myself the aspect of hatred, that all before us would dance to my tune.
I wanted to bring low our enemies before they even spotted us. Curses and anxieties, corruption unseen. So I took from me the aspect of terror.
I had no such ambitions. When mine had fill of fun, I desired only to ruin all that remained, and so destruction was aspected to me.
And thusly empowered did we return to the burning hells, satin corner of fabric's weave, to garner the disenfranchised and unscrupulous, and wage our just war against the 4 lords. With victory would come dominance, and we would rise to the stations we so deserved, and finally put an end to the Sin War.
And in their wake, I beheld a terrible sight. My fellow brethren thieving, torturing, mutilating, slaughtering. It was a small group, but the local magistrate counted amongst their number. To rise up against them was to risk death, but what choice did I have? The killing had to stop. I had but simple means to preach my simple message. Be kind to one another. Even I was surprised at how quickly it took, as such acts of kindness paid forward like a great wave. Even the magistrate, hard-hardened, was touched by the pleas and benedictions of the common people. We marched on the capital weeks later, simple folk and nobility alike, seeking an audience. It was the magistrate who helped sway the guards, and with her kind words we were able to greet the emperor himself. I did not live to see the fulfillment of my dream, but they continued their faith in my name, dubbing it the Zakarum. And soon all of Kyrgyzstan swayed toward kindness and peace.
I hated my designated task. Every time a new realm was found, contested and absorbed, it fell to dreary Tyrael to collect and catalog the new arrivals. Plants, animals, and people all had to be shown their place in the order of things. It was exceedingly dull. Even the occasional realm consumed by the burning hells only provided brief variance in the iteration. Desperate for any reprieve, I took a lengthy sojourn across the plains of Entun. The walk did me some good. Crystal trees accented winding winds. The melody of symmetry, everything in its proper place and pattern. As I wandered, the pattern grew dissonant, and I was reminded once again of the futility of it all. Eternal war flourishing across the fabric, preventing form or function save in one little corner. All that remained was ruination. I do not know how long I walked. Days, weeks. None were surprised as I when my thoughts stilled and I realized I did not know where I was. Oh, a new realm, to be sure, but one I knew nothing of. A cursory examination confirmed it had only recently connected with the outer edges of the high heavens, likely driven there by some recent shift or another. I reported this to my fellow council members, of course, that the machinations of war and bureaucracy could commence.
The council convened, as was their norm, to consider and debate, as was their norm. I didn't care much either way myself, until I was skimming the reports and discovered the realm had a direct connection to the Hells. At this, I suddenly realized why the others were so buzz, and immediately raised my personal levy and roused my greatest warrior, Iswol, to race to the border of this new realm. I was no fool, of course. I would not take drastic action until the council had finished their deliberations. But it was clear what the intent was, and so I had our forces construct a great fortress in these borderlands, still on the side of the new realm, but in striking distance of the outermost edges of the Hells. The architects dubbed it Pandemonium. Blessedly, the council did not take overly long. The fortress was finishing construction when word came down of their decision.
It is the adjudication of the Angiris Council that, using the unique magics available within this new realm, a grand artifact shall be constructed that shall permanently divide it from its connection to the burning hells. This device, the World Stone, shall ensure peace and tranquility for the realm henceforth, and speed it along its destined path. For the High General Imperius, we do have a task most important.
I trusted in their wisdom, as I always did. This sanctuary, they were calling it now, would doubtless assist in Heaven's endeavors for years to come. And besides, they gave me the job I love best. The fortress pandemonium completed, I mustered under Imperius's banner, and we charged directly into the burning hells, a distraction to light the demon's attention whilst this world stone was constructed by angelic architects. This was a task I relished, as I always did. Me and my valiants crashed into the unsuspecting lines of hell. Over and over we claimed easy victory. Too often, and too easy.
Curious, I sent one of my infiltrators to ascertain what was going on in the Hells. To my surprise, a civil war was currently raging, one that had not even reached my ears. Apparently, 3 upstarts were challenging the 4 lords. Now, it was not uncommon for the 4 to have to defend their positions, unkept and barbarous as the demons were by nature. But what surprised me was that these 3 were apparently making strong headways, so much so that none was certain who was currently ahead. In that moment I knew the wisdom of the Council and the blessing the Fabric had gifted us. No more skirmishes or distraction tactics. I called the host of heaven to smash into Hell's lines, and we butchered by tens of thousands. We would end the Sin War right here and now.
It was not a good day. Asmodan and Belial were allowed their usual preenings, and most of the upper officers weren't aware, but Andariel and I knew the truth. The upstarts were doing well. Curse them! How were they managing what so many others had failed at? Generations of delicate balance of the 4, all being smashed by 3 children! And then the armies of heaven arrived! Admittedly, we knew this was coming. Indeed, it was strange how long they'd taken to respond, but we weren't quite prepared for the ferocity and size of their assault. Spearheaded by the great warrior Iswal and his patient master, no less. I grew worried, but scheming Andariel saw opportunity.
After all, how could we wage a great war between our own kind when more tempting targets presented themselves? It took mere days to convince much of the Three's forces to abandon them and return to our side. With a unified front, we were able to refocus our lines against General Imperius and his attack dog. Which was good, because by about now he decided to start guerrilla tactics through the deep crevices of the Hells. As we prepared for a long and grueling campaign, I lamented the fate of the 3. I simply did not have the time or the patience to deal with them. And so they were cast out of the Hells, banished by virtue of the 4 lords, and would languish in their chosen prison until death finally claimed them.
With the world stone construction complete, the barrier rose as planned, though faithful Imperius was not heard from, and presumed lost to his wages in the burning hells. A 3-day memoriam was held across the heavens, and there are some who held vigil over his seat for much longer. Regardless, with this, Sanctuary would no doubt drift towards the heavens, and soon join us in the great pattern. Only, as months marched on, it didn't.
As Chief Fabrimaster and Scholar of the Weave, it fell to me to understand and comprehend what was causing Sanctuary's reticence. The first and most obvious theory was that demonic presence remained, and while the Council took this to be true and acted accordingly, I knew better. Even the presence of one of the 4 would not be enough to anchor Sanctuary this way. No, something else was stopping it. Pinpricks of alteration that hugged the realm onto Fabric's weave. Yet they proved, ironically, frustratingly difficult to pin down.
I was less than pleased. Moments away from greatness, only for it to be ripped away by angels. Typical. At least we were left someplace more enjoyable than some. The efforts of the high heavens had certainly turned many of these humans toward their way of thinking. but it was easy enough to coerce a few with bribery and pleasantries. I learned of the formation of the Haradrim, angels' chosen mages, and worse, our little puppets had never stopped their experiments into artifacts after the construction of our aspects. These artificers could cause us permanent problems.
My fellows simply did not think large enough. To be assured, our lives could be prolonged, or even returned upon death. But what if we could crystallize our existence? I envisioned a form of soul stasis that would allow the aged, the wizened, the skilled to endure past their years and bestow their presence upon newer generations. Perhaps someday we could even uplift all mankind into such a state. Fortunately, some of my more outlandish brethren concocted an idea for a soul matrix that I was able to build upon.
Word came down through our angelic allies. There were demons, powerful ones, still upon Sanctuary. They were trapped here, but with the bulk of the Angels' home army lost with Imperius, it was given to us, the Haradrim, to excise these cancers from Sanctuary. My role in all of this was the study of the artifacts constructed in times past to help us better understand and find these demon lords, a task I had no small difficulty with. But with knowledge in hand, the hunt was to begin, though the Haradrim seemed split on what exactly to do with the lords upon their defeat. With Elder Cool's new soul matrix, a new design sprang forth. A soul stone. This could be implanted into a being containing them within it. They would be preserved so long as the soul stone was preserved. But if implanted into another host, that host would gain all the powers of the stone's prisoner. This, they argued, was the Haradrim's true task. To not simply remove the demons, but to be empowered by them. Slowly, the Haradrim began to factionalize. Certain powerful and influential mage lords, such as Sankikor or Talrasha, gathered followers who they promised veneration and rewards if they supported their bid for the stones. I hesitate to use the phrase civil war to describe those dark days, as there was nothing civil about it. I do not know why I endured as long as I did in blood-soaked holes, but when Jazrith and I found a young girl, orphaned by coincidence and collateral, he and I at last bowed out of such political endeavors. Taking the child in as her surrogate fathers, we traveled west to the lands of Kandurus. In the months that followed, I dared not think about what we left behind.
I was brilliant then. Knight Captain of King Percival, a long and illustrious career behind me. There was discussion of me being landed soon, and I relished the idea of a comfortable retirement, away from the hustle of courtly life. We were patrolling the southern shores when we first saw it. Clearly inhuman, whatever it was, charged my platoon and slaughtered 2 of my soldiers within seconds. The surprise on its side was able to unsteady us, but we stood firm, so it became cruel instead. Darting through and around our chargers, whispering words we couldn't quite hear, dashing out of shadows to drag another of our number down. As my people died, one by one, the world around me dimmed, and soon all I could hear was the thundering of my own heart. It took some seconds before I could even realize we were giving as much as we were taking. The beast's black blood sizzling on the ground as its wounds slowed it down. When all were slain but me and he, it stared at me, glaring. It produced a small, colorless gem, sharp like a dagger, and spoke in a tongue that smelled like crushed ants and sulfur. told me the mage stone it held was the only way it could be slain, grinning all the while. When I asked why taunt me with its very weakness, it laughed. It enjoyed feasting on my terror, my helplessness. In the face of such a burden of knowledge, I did the only thing I could do. I ran.
We weren't doing particularly well. No artifacts, no positions, no prominence, no power. Every avenue of advancement curtailed. We needed something to give us an edge over the factions and lords, something that could give us that precious inch in the door. Some strange old man in a white cloak approached my sister about a nightmare beast and pointed us in the right direction. Curious and more than a little desperate, we took our group south. There was a palpable magic in the air, and I could feel it growing thicker the further we journeyed. When we passed a young man screaming in terror, I knew we were close. Imagine my surprise when we found an entire troop of Kandura's knights, slain to the last. The scene was grisly but informative. They had clearly fought bravely, but the beast in question was nowhere to be seen. Instead, all we spied was one knight's corpse gripping a jagged red stone, as if plunging it downwards into the ground. They were quite dead, of course, but the stone pulsed with demonic power. This at last would be our great edge.
I and my fellows experimented on the stone for many nights. Though nightmares made sleep difficult, ultimately we learned nothing of import or value. Disgruntled, many of our group were content to simply move on, but the two sisters argued. Magda proposed making an offering of the artifact, using it to curry favor with the king. Adria disagreed, violently. I tried not to overhear some of their conversation, but the shouting made it difficult. It was clear Adria had lost something in the last few months. Spouting nonsense about a lord and the precepts of the burning hells. She attempted to take the stone by force, but we came to the assistance of our more sane leader, and Adria elected instead to simply leave, alone, into the wilds. We of the Coven agreed with Magda's plan. After all, at this point, what was there to lose?
The fools used the stone to barter with their vaunted polity. The elder King Percival accepted their gift graciously, granting them position, clout, and court as they always wished. Me? I drifted. I had great knowledge of magic and alchemy, passing myself off as a lowly witch of the wilds, offering my services and goods to whomever chose to buy. It was menial work for a menial life, but it allowed me to keep an ear to the ground for rumors and whispers. I learned that the king, in a ceremony where he bequeathed his crown to his son Leoric, had made the stone an emblem of Kanduras, that any who held it held the right to the throne, an heirloom of his bloodline. And being of such import, he was entombed deep within the other venerated artifact of Kanduras, the Cathedral of Tristram.
I only moved to Tristram pretty recently. Heard tales of a simple farming kingdom called Conduras, grabbed my tools and my bag, and just headed off. Nice enough spot. Didn't have much call for arms and armor, but I was kept busy with local work. Nice change of pace. Best part, though? The produce. Turns out a long time ago, some bigwigs got together and built themselves an artifact. Not some little trinket, mind. These folks got clever. I don't know the specifics, but they made a whole building by enchanting specific parts and the like. Brilliant stuff. Called it the Cathedral. Does some flammerge with the surrounding lands. Keeps the crops big and healthy. And of course, healthy crops means healthy livestock. It's nothing fancy, mind, but it keeps things happy and hearty. Nice stuff. Nice stuff. I timed my visit well, too. There was some spat with the Grand Vizier pretty recently. The local witch, something, was telling me all about it. Turns out she, the Vizier, not the witch, was caught plotting against Prince Albrecht. On her butt she went. Over a decade of service, gone in a night. Shame. Some scrawny little lad named Lazarus took over in her place. All a bunch of hullabaloo. Glad I skipped out. Me? I'm content just to sit, ply, and have a pint now and again. I said as much to the nice lass what came through just a bit ago. What was her name again? Taratha? Mindy? No. Minar? That's not right. Moira. What? No. McTaggart.
My name is Morena. I serve at the behest of my elder Akara as the first flight of the Sisterhood of the Sightless Eye. I had spent much of my time in the past few years as outreach to many of the other factions of Sanctuary. The Children of Bulkathos, the Priests of Rathma, the Church of Zakarum, the Mages of Zan Esu, even the Vizhik Tar. Though dull, I did not begrudge my chosen task. The Sisterhood served as crucial link between defenders of the lands, and it felt best to stay on top of things. I hear much in my travels, including disturbing rumors from the eastern capital of Kurast, but such things were far from my mind now. Others of our order had reported, very recently, a strange migration of many beasts and other creatures of the plains migrating en masse toward one of the nearby cities. I was to follow, report, and if possible assist. The Sisterhood was on formal terms with Honduras, and we would prefer it to remain that way. The city itself was welcoming. Friendly folk, nice atmosphere, but something felt off in the air. A few cursory questions and I was pointed toward the local cathedral. Apparently the stampede had made its way into the depths of the edifice, disturbing more than a few local worshippers and actually killing a few townsfolk in the confusion. While the local soldiers were still mustering, I vowed to descend into the depths and determine for myself what was transpiring.
I was growing worried. Morena's first report had come back with its usual promptness, but that was the last we'd heard of her. It had been over a week now. Worse, reports of random, unexplainable deaths were growing more frequent. I was already preparing pen to paper when I was surprised by a visit of two of the Haradrim. Apparently, the newly crowned King Albrecht had already sent missive before Morena had even arrived, begging the mage's help with the recent troubles. The elder Jazrith was a skilled summoner and bade his friend in their ward to reside with us in the keep, whilst he investigated the city for himself. Before he left, I requested any word of our wayward sister, to which he readily agreed. Jazrith was always such a calming presence, and my trembling nerves stilled.
The cathedral was troubled, clearly. I could sense the malice seeping out of the very stones, driving the local beasts mad. I warned the city before my descent, but only young Lazarus seemed to listen. Regardless, I had a duty to perform. My loyal elements and summoned beasts kept me safe the first few treacherous levels, but the further down I went, the worse things seemed to get. Crazed monsters, frothing and screaming. But worst of all was the tomb. Here slept late King Leoric and his loyal guard, or so I thought. But after trading blows and spells with their skeletal remains, I knew powerful magic was perverting and twisting the cathedral's very core. Leoric himself, crowned still on his skeletal head, was already damaged when I found him. And though it cost me dearly, the cursed king was no more. So tired. I
I just need to rest a little while before I make my way back to the surface.
An unfamiliar man entered Eastgate Keep, a crusader of Zakarum named Aiden. He was here on ordinary business, simply exchanging information with the Sisterhood before returning to his troop. But his visit was fortuitous, for Akara and I both agreed it had been far too long without any word from my good friend. Akara begged young Aiden's aid, to which he readily agreed, of course. But as he was prepping for the journey, we decided that no lone wanderer should travel to Tristram henceforth. I volunteered to join the brave young man. My magical skills weren't what they used to be, but I could still support him in his journey. And of course, I am something of a scholar, so who knows? Mayhap my knowledge would be useful.
I worried after them as they departed. Cain was a good friend, and the young Aiden showed promise. It took me only a few minutes to pen the letters and send my faithful rogues to the four corners, seeking further aid. I prayed they would not be necessary.
Join me, my fellows! Follow me, my brethren! The king's chosen have failed, and so it falls to us to cleanse this befouled place! Downward!
What is going on here?
Oi! The Archbishop is leading the local guards down to cleanse the cathedral.
But what about the heroes who braved its depths?
Why do you think we feel the need to send in the guards?
Damnation! Aiden! Aiden! I fear the worst. Are you ready? Good. Let us descend. Mayhap we will be able to catch the locals and join forces. This is truly a cursed place. Is that inside out? I see our compatriots at least made some headway. I think I can hear the soldiery up ahead. We should hurry.
Just a bit further, comrades. Don't let losses stop you. Think of your families, counting on you.
Is that... Is that the crown of Kandurus? This blood everywhere, but no bodies. Just broken bones. What a pitiable fate. Come. Surely Jazrith and Morena are ahead.
No. Please, anyone! Oh God! Please help!
Hurry, my friend. My God. Are you all right?
We did it. With the beasts gone, the cathedral's cleansed. But none of them.
Sir, what is that gemstone?
This was lying on the central pedestal. It's the only weapon I could find in the scuffle. The creatures. My allies.
Their deaths were not in vain, good sir. Now please, listen to me. Listen to my voice.
What?
That's it. Focus on me. I need you to give me that stone, sir. It is very dangerous, and you shouldn't hold that any longer than necessary.
You just want to take it. You want the stone for yourself.
Sir, please be calm. Aiden! Lower your sword.
You do just want it!
Sir, you are in
just
no
like
condition.
Magda. I showed her. I'll show you too.
If we could just get you back to town to heal you.
You'd like that, don't you? Helpless, pathetic Lazarus, just like always. They spat on me. They hated me. But they're gone now. I'm here.
Sir,
I'm here now.
I'm going to have to ask you to... Aiden, no!
No! No! I have to. Where am I?
I'm sorry, friend. It was for the best. Rest now. Aiden, You should take the stone for now. Let us return. The people deserve to be told of our victory this day.
Aiden was having trouble sleeping. Little wonder, any brush with greatness diminishes us lessers. Few in town raised an eyebrow when I wandered into his room alone, as I'd hardly be the first that evening to offer my congratulations. As he spoke to me of the visions that plagued his sleep, I relished in their tellings, and offered him some of my more potent concoctions to allow him to embrace them fully. Of course, he thought it mere sleep aid. When he came to visit me the next day, I prostrated, trembling, my body betraying me in my lord's presence. He had commands for me, which I committed to heart, and then asked me an odd question I did not have an immediate answer for.
Where is the Knight Captain Marius?
The first few years had been unpleasant. Drink and drug, reducing the nightmares to distant memories, but still left me bereft of station and the benefits thereof. Daring not to show my face to my fellows, I stole into my former home to take a portion of my former wealth and fled, settling within Eastgate Keep that controlled the path through the Timmo mountain range. The people there were hospitable and treated me well. Few seemed to recognize me, but though I feared, none seemed inclined to oust me to my former post. With what I had, I was able to buy the tavern I stayed at, and over the years I slowly settled into a comfortable routine. Occasional renovations, importing fine wines and meats, and catering to the many travelers who frequented the route between Lutgallane and the cities of Westmarch, Kingsport, Tristram. Was not as glamorous as my former life, but I was content. I do not know how many years had passed, but one day a stranger wandered into my corner of the world. He was greeted as all passerbys were, but I spotted him from the back and recognized his arm and armament as a crusader of the East. Always eager to please the host of Zakarum, I paused in my countings and went out to greet him personally. When he saw me, his eyes, they weren't. I didn't know. I pleaded, begged, sobbing on my knees, screaming, It wouldn't stop the flames. The flames spread and spread and spread and spread, and I pleaded to nothing for nothing to return. Please, 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 please.
Amidst the spreading flames, and monsters, and panic, even the dead rose to challenge our exodus. Elders aided the younger and the less experienced, but in the end we lost many. I was fortunate enough to survive, and led our quiet group to one of the nearby encampments to recoup and recover. There was no doubt in my mind this fell work related to the recent events in Tristram, and so, before we'd even set up the first tent, I had runners chasing the corners of the map to inform allies. With luck, promised aid would arrive soon. No half measures this time. We would send forth a group of heroes. The first two arrived within just a few hours of each other.
Thankfully, I was already en route for unrelated business. Troubles in the Eastern Lands passing through the network, and, per our arrangement, I was sent as representative of the Ascari to the Sisterhood. Imagine my surprise upon finding the state of our allies' former home. With luck, I was able to link up with a fellow traveler, a paladin of Sakarum, on similar errand, and together find the Sisterhood's makeshift encampment. The matron there was welcoming, and the two of us were quickly directed towards nearby Tristram.
Though weary, I pressed my stalwart companion onwards, for fear held grip upon my heart. Asked I upon the matron the whereabouts of my friend and ally Aiden, but no word, ill or fair, returned. Thusly, upon a horizon coated in smoke, all hearts sank and my senses fled. Ran I, unthinking, until city's edge crumbled and crackled neath tristful boots. Thankfully, all was not lost. The war matron's excellent vision spotted fresh tracks, and a short jaunt led us to survivors. Though scant few in number, we counted among them one Deckard Kane, and an interestingly garbed man named Hakan.
Animals and plant life alike were not spared whatever was coming out of Tristram's cathedral. I'd been nearby for a few weeks already, trying to take samples and see what I could when the Dark Wanderer hit. The attack was so fast and brutal that by the time I made it to the city proper, it was already on fire. The people were haggard and panicked. I suppose I don't blame them, but it made my job much harder. Like herding Khazra. We got a good number out before the chaos claimed too many, but now I had a herd of scared, hungry people who couldn't scavenge to save their life. Literally. I was pretty happy to see the Paladin in Amazon. This was not my forte at all. It was only a couple days' trek to the Rogue's encampment, where the much more capable Akara and her sisters could take on the task of feeding and keeping the crowd. Glad to be rid of the burden, my compatriots and I were instead tasked with something a bit more on our level. Infiltrating Eastgate Keep and dealing with whatever evil lurked within.
I confess, in private, I was not ready for what we faced. A low, dull howling of whimpering pain that never ceased floated on the winds as we approached the front gates. My comrades, wisely, cautioned our approach. The gate was opened, and so we were able to slip in quietly. The dead roamed the halls like broken marionettes, a mockery I had trouble stomaching. Through concealment and conflict, we made our way through to the postern. But the primary passageway was blocked by two defenders, and a grisly sight.
I could scant comprehend what I beheld. It took the druid's trained eye to realize what we spied once called itself a man, strewn particularly as to retain his life, that his suffering fuel the scornful duo guarding him.
They block the way. We can't avoid them.
Then we don't.
What was left of Jazrith and poor Morena had barred our path. Though I was of no real help in battle, my more martially inclined comrades were able to lay our former allies to rest. Eastgate Cemetery had been raided by our enemy before our arrival, and I felt it unsafe to lay them there. We carried their bodies a ways apart to the edge of a small brook, where their sleeping bones might be able to listen to the rustling water. Jazrith always loved the sound of water. Soothed him, helped him sleep. I stayed there in contemplation while my comrades reconnected with Akara and the sisters and did whatever else they were doing. In the moment, I admit I couldn't bring myself to care. I honestly considered simply staying behind. But then my thoughts turned to young Leah, and I swore I could hear Jazra's voice quietly chiding me. And I knew. When the three returned, I was ready.
After the sage had lost his nerve at the keep, I sort of assumed he'd end up staying behind. Not that it made much difference to me, though the other two seemed to treat him like he was some bigwig. I was surprised the kid was coming, though.
Dear Cain actually asked me to keep his young ward, Leia, I think was her name, safe for him, but I firmly declined. The keep, what was left of my sisters. We were in no position to care for a fledgling woman. And besides, the girl had seen too much of loss as it is. She needed to be with what was left of her family, while she still could.
Fortunately, we did have one boon in all of this. The poor wretch left behind, the one ritualistically strewn in agony. He still lived, if you could call it that. We freed him, ending the runes binding him and letting him pass. But before he did, he was able to tell us one simple phrase.
Luth. Ghislaine.
It was only a few days' travel, but that trip was unforgiving. We had the good fortune to gain the assistance of a local caravan master, but I do not relish making that journey again anytime soon. With fresh water, shade, and a bit of rest under our belts, we were quick to reach out to the local lord, Jaren.
Fortunately, I was familiar with the young lord. We'd spoken briefly some years ago while we were traveling through the region. Whilst Aaliyah played with the attendants, my fellows and I briefed the man on our fears and concerns.
It was always a treat to see one of the Horadrim, though I was crestfallen to hear of the fate of his fellow. Tales of the horrors wrought in the Eastgate Keep were terrible, of course, but like a puzzle piece fitting into place. Our own recent issues in the sewers, which my soldiery were still cleaning up, would seem to fit the overall timeline. And since the Zen Asu mages had been poking around just a few days prior, it seemed as good a time as any. I confessed to Deckard, a bit embarrassed, that I'd forgotten about the old vault until my memory was jogged by news of fallen Yazrev. Whilst my troops swept the town for signs of the mages, I entrusted the good Deckard a small magical key that had been left in my possession some years prior. The gentleman looked at it with recognition and a hint of emotion I couldn't quite catch before he held it close and whispered something into it. Before my very eyes, a portal to another realm opened, and quietly in the back of my mind I made a note of fire my court mages for their failures. I managed to congratulate young Cain before my bodyguards were ushering me from the room.
Naturally, danger present, comrades hasten to displace trembling Cain and charge into Portal Maw. An uncertain time of confusion later, we returned, unwilling, having been sent completely askew by Maze's entrapments. Brave Cain offered to sojourn alone, and whilst several minutes passed in silence, bringing fear to heart, the sage returned, an object in hand.
What's that?
It's called a Horadric Cube.
Will it help?
I have no idea.
Deckard Cain, if you value your life, you must come with me immediately.
This whole assignment sucks. Traipsing around the desert, getting sand in my shoes, chasing down amateurs. The Horadrim are okay for hedge wizards, but when they screw up, boy, does it cause a mess. Still, at least some wizards know enough to set up some basic safety and alarm wards. I had a good hour's warning before the whoever he was showed up. Normally I would have ignored him, or if he provided irritating confront, but one of the wards was throwing some feedback I didn't like, so I held back a bit and watched from behind a veil. Clad in iron and bulky, he didn't look like any mage I'd ever seen, and the way he tore apart the keystones was just slapdash. But powerful. Very powerful. I quietly added another layer to the veil while the man started to descend into the tomb. I was watching pretty close, so I got a nice shot of his surprise as fire and destruction blasted him. The guy's cloak was burnt clean off, which was nice because I could see his expression over the next few minutes. He was super unhappy. He shouted something at another figure which emerged from the pit, but whatever was said in return, I have absolutely no idea. I'm not sure it was any language, just more like yelling and fire, a whole lot of fire. Thing is, the guy who came out of the ground didn't seem like he was trying to hurt the other guy, or anything really, just senseless destruction at whatever happened across his gaze. And it was causing some real damage to the nearby terrain, let me tell you. The first gentleman turned tail and fled. I thought about following suit, but fortunately, 2 angels arrived a few minutes later. There's something you won't hear me say often. And the one, Ariel and I were able to at least direct and contain the tomb-goer's rage, whilst the others sought help. Gotta be honest, I've dealt with a lot of crap in my life, but those were some intense hours. We couldn't really hurt that guy. The angel lady just called him Demon, without being at serious risk of injury or death ourselves, but we could drag his attention this way or that and try to contain how much of the desert he was wrecking. And I know what you're thinking. Who cares if you just smatter some sand around? Thing is, the fabric was getting a bit warped from all this raw power coursing over it. It was starting to cause some real ripples and warps, and I soon found myself trying to explain all this to Ariel, but magic wasn't her forte, I guess. Doesn't matter. Point is, we got organized and started spreading the damage around. Bad for the desert, but good for reality. We were still playing Pongo with Demon Boy when I saw one hell of a sight.
Turiel flung me through the air, and I landed directly on our opponent, spear first. Blazing waves of nightmare energy erupted from the man's hands, but I was already behind, gripping Shout with both hands and upending him, sending him, and spear still impaled, into a nearby dune. In moments, waves of ice flung from the sorcerer's hands coated the dunes, temporarily trapping the fiend.
Some dude was summoning up a massive storm to surround the creature, and the flits of lightning already rumbling gave me an idea.
The stark smell of ozone filled the air as blinding sheets of lightning thundered down through my spear and into the creature. I braced, knowing what was to come. Thankfully, Comrade Jeffrey had already moved into position. Between shield and magic, the worst of the detonation was deflected, leaving us damaged but capable. The crater he left was wide, and in its very center lay a small yellow crystal in the shape of a dagger. The sorceress moved towards it, wards ready. But before I could caution her, I was interrupted by the angel.
Hear me, heroes. You have done a great thing today. This demon has been destroyed.
But, my lady, I knew this man. This was Taurasha, the Mage Lord, premier of our order. And that is a soul stone.
What?
It was Cool's invention. It would contain the power of a demon and imbue it into its host. Though I can imagine it did not work very well if the Mage Lord was driven mad by it as he was.
That was not a human, young scholar. That was a demon. Baal, one of the usurpers.
That is because the stones never worked as intended. Forgive me, I suspected before, but this confirms beyond a doubt. Soul stones never imprisoned the demon lords within, but rather gave them a taste of immortality by letting them seduce and control their new hosts.
So Taurasha died years ago. But this explains Malthael's concerns perfectly. If we can gather and destroy these soul stones, the demons will be purged from Sanctuary forever.
If I may, I believe I know where one of them might be.
Things were not going well. The forces of Sankakor had been bad enough, and only a score of my fellow Vizjiktar remained. We hadn't held ground in the city proper in over a year, But in the last few months, a swarm of bizarre, blood-worshipping cultists had swarmed the jungle pathways. It was... The bastards enjoy guerrilla tactics, hit and runs, and other unpleasantness. The docks were our last bastion. With our backs to the sea, it was harder for the bloodgutters to employ their preferred methods. And thankfully they were no good in a straight fight. But that just meant doldrums. We couldn't advance, but neither could they. They had the city and the jungle to keep them going. We had the port and its supply ships. I was thinking of pulling out about a week ago. In truth, some of my assassins already had. Not that I'd admit to knowing that. But for a letter sent from the Elder Akara.
My fellow Vizjiktar, there is a dire threat we face with immediacy that requires your expert care. We do not know the full scope nor scale of this threat yet, but I implore you to stand firm and stay in correspondence. As I pen this letter, I am sending one of my best rogues to investigate, and I hope to have more news for you soon.
Since then, we'd received several more letters detailing horrors I am all too familiar with. And it is at her urging that I now remain, holding the line with what's left of my order. And though it had only been days, I admit they were quite wearying to me. You can imagine my surprise when promised reinforcements arrived, accompanied by 2 angels.
I almost didn't get off the boat. I know what you're thinking, and no, it wasn't fear or even the tales of the fetish warriors. No, it was just wrong. Even here on the boat, barely in sight of the jungle's edge, I could feel the perversion of it. The howling would leave my ears for the entirety of our stay in Karast.
I did not want to be here again. I could not imagine what young Leah would think if I had brought her. Though she was not fond of my choice, she will be safe in Lutgalayan under Lord Jiren's care. These jungles were no longer for decent folk. Fortunately, one of the Vizjiktar was waiting for us. Highest ranked of the remaining assassins, young Natalia was focused and quite helpful. While she and Jeffrey discussed strategy and shared information, I took a rare moment to rest my feet and found my thoughts drifting in directions they oughtn't.
While the paladin and the assassin discussed, Isendra and I conferred privately. It was rare to meet someone so casually competent. It was oddly refreshing. Oh, don't mistake me. My comrades were capable enough, but the synergies of Sanesu and Ascari worked wonderfully. Already she was discussing the possibilities of elementally empowered arrows, and I the idea of flaming jabs. A good thing, too, the jungle was unpleasant.
I speak truthfully. Without Angel's presence, I would strongly reconsider our chosen task. Yet, as company focused, progress made swift accompaniment. Harassers and skirmishers beaten back with fire and thunder. My heart grieved for fair Hakan, as yon jungle's torture sat ill upon him, and vowed I to dispel this curse with haste, for sake of fellow. Yet, same fellow was he who, through cobwebs of torment, spied our first bit of good fortune.
It was a brain. Just sitting there, magically preserved. My first instinct was fire, but the scholar with us was able to identify it. Somehow. Apparently it was the brain of one of the former Horodrim, a person named Kaleem who was opposed to Sankakor. Near as he could tell, Sankakor decided the best way to deal with this person was to magically preserve him, then chop him into bits to ensure he remained in agony for all time.
As it happened, my new bestie had actually seen this before, and from this, good old book smeller over there came up with a plan.
If we could use these pieces and use Jezrith's Heradric Cube, we could craft a magical focus that would pierce directly to the source of the curse, likely Sankakor, or rather Mephisto himself.
As I watched them puzzle their way through the jungle, picking at tormented organs, I knew I had chosen well.
With such allies, a true end to the Sin War might finally be a reality.
And so we finally arrived at the capital square of Kurast. Even here the jungle swarmed inwards. No civilians, no innocent bystanders. All here were zealots of perverted Sakarum, usurped by Sankakor in his bid for power. And as we reached the central temple itself...
Thank you, old friend.
The scholar manipulated the Heradric artifact with expert care, quickly crafting a focus that rent us under illusion and corruption. We all felt it, though my druid friend nearly fell to his knees from the force, and before us was an edifice of torture.
I dare not speak of what became of former home. Opposed, I drew strength from it instead, choosing courage and righteous fury in face of blasphemy.
The paladin roared and charged ahead into the durance of hatred. His courage enkindled ours, and we vowed to see this through.
Angels and fools. I should have expected as much. Before you descend upon me in your fervor, I offer terms. My pathetic brothers, in exchange for clemency. I can tell you where they are, and what artifacts empower them, as well as how to bypass them.
And we will hear none of it.
Keep thy poison tongue chained, demon. We offer thee but one deal.
Death.
With a side of ice.
This is beneath me. You are beneath me! I brought the hells to heel! I terrified the heavens into complacency! I stamped your maggots into line! And I will not stop until all of you are screaming in agony as your own wounds drown you!
The violet soulstone clattered to the ground, rent of its former victim. A capable crew we had, and ever grateful I was for Tyrael's assistance. Far more combat capable was he than me. Unfortunately, we now had no leads on the so-called Dark Wanderer and his diabolical guest.
Tyrael was suggesting regrouping at the fortress east of here on the edge of something. I was barely listening at that point. Honestly, I could barely hear him in general. Jeffrey, the paladin, came over and did the weirdest thing. He gave me a big ol' hug. I was a bit confused at first. Was I really looking that bad? It took me a moment to realize he was sobbing. It was... it was awkward. At first I was thinking, man, I don't get this at all. But then I thought of the home I could never go back to, and the thought of seeing it like this, I held him a bit closer.
With the curse dispelled, the jungle and city could recover, but that would be a long road for more capable hands than ours. I confess, the thought occurred to me to simply abandon the environs, let the wilds reclaim our former home. But such were musings for another day.
While en route to the fortress Pandemonium, we were met with an outer scouting party. Some of the attendant humans left by Imperius years prior. Among them was a rather familiar, decrepit-looking young man who bowed and spoke with that fond politeness.
Greetings, venerated heroes. Please, do me the kindness of helping me kill these demon-corrupted attendants, would you?
I'm not certain who was more surprised by the request, us or the attendants. Either way, immediately after, the man had drawn his scythe, and I recognized the group was, belatedly, poising to strike us. So...
Fricos were poor sport, though Cassie told me not to underestimate the value of a good ambush, and while I wouldn't say it out loud, she had a point. They probably could have killed at least a few of us if we hadn't been warned.
The tall one, probably an Amazon, demanded of me my name and affiliation. I paused in raising the corpses of the cultists and turned to bow again, apologizing for forgetting my manners. Only one of them was actually pleased to hear of my given profession, but the sneers of the druid brought a legitimate smile to my face.
Apparently, this Zool had infiltrated the Fortress Pandemonium on unrelated business and discovered in short order that the Lord of Terror now resided within, fortifying his position and cowering like a cornered rat. The angelic recruits were swiftly converted or killed, and apparently we had been expected, as in short order Zool was given charge of the crazies and told to go out and ambush us.
Bear Zool proffered tactics purpose, not thinking such paltry group could slaughter us, let alone with angelic host, its aim instead being our weakening upon arrival, to better serve Ambush's fell intent.
The counter-proposal was as obvious as it was devious. With Zool's unique talents, the ambush party would serve our purposes instead of their dark masters. Corpses marionetted into battle to ensure the trap awaiting in the fortress would be less than successful. As we finished the remainder of our journey, I noticed most of my fellows giving the necromancer a wide berth, save Geoffrey, who was actively chatting with the younger man. I felt compelled to ask Zool how he'd managed to infiltrate demonic cultists so clearly tinged with evil. His response was a bitter smile.
For the first time, the bias against the priests of Rathma worked in my favor.
It was only a short while longer before we reached fortress gates. We were, of course, welcomed in warmly. Even a casual glance confirmed a small but elite group who were quietly maneuvering into position. If I was given to wonder such things, I'd ponder what went through their minds in the last seconds of their lives, as their fellows sprang up and attacked them with suicidal vigor.
Okay, I'm not into the icky stuff, but I gotta admit this kid was impressive. The confusion of the initial counter-ambush was so strong that I think it took him a solid 30 seconds to realize what was going on. It was great. 30 seconds was plenty of time for Cassie and me to clean up.
Surely. By a minute's passing, the cultists lay dead or dying, and only now did we hear the chittered cries of the demon.
It pained me to see my friend like this. I know. That was Diablo, not Aiden. But even as I stared into his horrified eyes, I wondered if any of the man was left within.
Unfortunately, speaking as an expert, a cornered animal is one of the most dangerous, and that proved true here. The would-be lord raged at us in a way I can only say was unnatural, shaking and screaming and hurling fire and lightning and terror our way.
Fortunately, the dead have no use for such things. So, handily provided a resource, Providence provided too much for the foolish demon.
Those fell creatures' own dead minions blanketed his attacks, blows of purity struck true, and with swiftness most satisfying, things fell still in carved halls.
Diablo was no more. I confess a shudder, as if a great weight lifted from me. Whilst we had suffered much, we were successful. Comrade Tyrael stayed briefly to ensure no stragglers remained, before returning to the high heavens to summon reinforcements and reclaim the fortress for its proper host, In his passing, I turned to my mortal allies to congratulate them on their great success, and inform them of the bounty they were soon to receive.
I'm sorry, what?
I don't understand. What is there to be confused about?
I'm not so much confused as I'm wondering why you were plotting behind our backs this entire time.
Plotting? Okay, surely now you jest. This has been the goal all along. With the demons and artifacts permanently removed, Sanctuary may now take its rightful place as a part of the high heavens. Surely you know this.
She's right. If these really were the last demons on the plane, our alignment will gradually shift towards the heavens over time. It'll take a while, but eventually we'll just become another part of the high heavens on their corner of the fabric.
And what happens to us, then?
Beats me. I'm more a magical fabric of reality kind of woman.
Speak to us then, Angel. What fate befalleth the fish lost in the shifting tides?
I do not understand this hostility. You will become a part of the great pattern, as all who currently dwell within the high heavens already are. You will be who you should be, do what you should do, and be happy in the doing. You, assassin woman.
My name is Natalia.
Forgive me. You, Natalia, would be a baker, and quite good at it too.
What?
I speak the truth. With such craft you would find contentment, and serve your wares to others similarly content. Can you tell me this does not sound appealing? Or you, years spent toiling as caretaker of the dead, when instead you could have devoted yourself to your architecture. I do not come as a hostile entity seeking to consume. I come here to bring you happiness, joy, peace. And I will not lie to you. The burning hells still exist and must still be fought. But that is the province of those who should fight. You were forced to fight, bound against your will. You deserve better than this.
No.
What?
You said we were forced. Forced to fight? But we weren't. You've got it flipped. We chose to fight.
Circumstance chose you to fight.
No. Circumstance presented us the choice. We choose. Just because you ask a question doesn't mean we have to answer it. We may have gone through horrible things these last few days, but magically wiping it all away is not the solution. I don't want to have to be a baker. I want to choose to be a baker.
But you would be happy as a baker.
And that is my choice to decide.
A point is made. Assuredly, lives would be more content under such environs. But I fear impairment ensueth under angelic yoke.
It's not a yoke. It is what you should be, what you should do. And would you choose your freedom, your choice, over the lives and happiness of those around you? Think about the dead. Think of how many innocents have suffered in just a short span of time. How could you selfishly choose your freedom over the lives of others?
While valid, you must agree that while the sin war wages, such innocent lives will always be lost.
Only until it ends. Someday we will purge evil from fabrics weave forever. Something your sanctuary's conjunction would speed along considerably.
And not a thought for the imbalance that would cause? Yes, evil's removal would benefit us all, but what of chaos?
What of chaos? Order is good. It provides protection, unity, harmony. Chaotic things have no place in society.
With your very words, you admit your ignorance. Do you truly believe such a simple, surface-level blanket statement? Or are you simply too blinded by your very nature to think otherwise?
I care not for what you imply, necromancer. I am only trying to do what is right.
And what is orderly? It's who you are, what you are, and that was decided for you. We don't want that forced upon us. Is that so difficult to see?
How can I possibly see reason in the ramblings gathered before me?
This is all moot anyways. The barrier, which we can see right over there, dividing Sanctuary from the burning hells, means this is happening one way or the other.
Exactly. There's no real reason to continue to deliberate upon such childish notions as being free when there are more real things at stake.
Actually, that's not quite true.
What?
If we were to destroy the World Stone, that barrier would fall, and Sanctuary could return to its natural state.
How could you know about that?
Who do you think sacrificed for your stone?
It doesn't matter. You cannot reach it, you cannot destroy it, and even if you tried, I would stop you. And I know you. In your hearts, you are all good people. You do not wish to do such a thing.
You're right. We do not want to hurt you, our ally and comrade, any more than we wish to harm anyone else.
But we will choose to if we must.
You will not reach the mountain's summit.
Assembled heroes, before you lay the gates of Sescheron, which have stood for years, and you shall not breach them now. Remove yourselves from our lands. We stand on the side of light. You shall not be allowed to reach Mount Ariat, and that which you seek will not be yours.
Honored son of Bulkathos, a plea I speak. We seek neither blood nor violence. Our mission is of reclamation, to remove Worldstone's grip on Sanctuary's weave, that our course be true to those within and not without.
What could possibly drive you to side against an archangel of the high heavens? Or is this poison, whispered from the lips of the banished one hiding in the back there?
I am present as part of the group, nothing more. When our mission is concluded, I will depart henceforth.
Oh, of course. Plainsfolk spitting on the mountain, that's whatever. Hadn't realized you would come spitting too.
I have not come spitting, you menstruating mendicant.
Enough. This does not concern any of this. Hakan is here as part of our fellowship, and we are here with joint purpose. Leave your grudges out of this.
Very well. You have not answered my question, though.
The High Heavens seek to consume Sanctuary and make us part of them. We'd rather remain ourselves. That's it, really.
And this course has spurred this madness?
Unfortunately, yes. My comrade spoke true. We do not wish any ill upon the mountain's keepers, nor heaven's defenders. But we cannot sit by, idle, while our lives and futures are subtly stolen away.
What do you mean? The group explained all to me. It was a lot to take in. I was skeptical at first, I admit, but their insistence upon not simply battering me aside, as they surely had the power to do, and stomp past gave me pause. They were reasonable. I think that's what scared me the most. In the end, I couldn't bar the path. I let them pass aside, knowing what that would mean. I stole home to grab some provisions and a flask, and made my way for the hills.
The children of Bolcathos were not as reasonable as our host at the gates. The moment we passed Secheron, we were beset upon. Catapult, magic, blade. The very earth rose to challenge us. The children's leader, one Nilathok, proved a competent tactician. Worse, we weren't particularly keen on slaughtering those who should be allies. It made for slow, grinding progression.
Frankly, the whole climb sucked. Oh, sure, there were a bunch of meatheads charging out to cause us trouble, and that, sucked. But once we killed Nilla-Whatsit, it got worse, because the survivors started harrying us as we made our way up the winding path to the summit's peak.
Fortunately, I've had recent experience with such tactics, and our group was coordinated enough to keep the worst of it at bay. By the time we reached the crystalline passage, most of the children had backed off, which just left one small issue.
My comrades were not used to the cold like me, especially Jeffrey. I offered him one of the spare pelts from the Fallen, made sure not to tell him where it came from. Don't think he'd like that. That's alright though. I don't think any of us liked any of this. It felt weird. I don't want to get all contemplative or nothing, just... I thought I'd be happy to see these slopes again.
My heart went out to mine companion. Though we spake not a word, one could divine pangs of recognition as we fought our way through barriers hewn. Thus in turn spake I not, sparing him empty platitudes. Generations of free-willed people would be our reward, regardless of cost incurred hence.
Worried? No, I'm fine. Khan will work through it, we've got his back. Now the one I was really worried about was Sir Kane.
All I could think about was, what would he think? What would he think of me?
It wasn't much longer before we reached the summit.
I do not want to do this. Do not make me do this.
Don't! Don't even start.
Was it required to place kin and countrymen in our path? Was it incumbent upon thee to seek blood-stained peaks?
Oh, isn't that the whole point? She really couldn't stop herself. She had no choice.
Enough! I have brought some few soldiery with me, and together we angels will stand for what must be, for what is good for you, even if you fight it, kicking and screaming.
It is regrettable. But even with her additional angelic defenders, they were simply not a match for my seasoned compatriots. As the poor woman lay, energy bleeding out of her beautiful wings, Natalia knelt by her side.
You cannot do this. You cannot choose for all your people.
But that's the point, isn't it? We can't choose for everyone. But neither can you.
After a moment of silence from my compatriots, I quietly shuffled over. The world stone was a human artifact, born as all such are through great sacrifice, and shuddering with powerful magics. To shatter the Soul Stone back in Pandemonium, we'd had to burn the lives of Diablo's faithful. Here, all we had were ourselves. I pored over the device while my compatriots debated.
I could head down the mountain with a few helpers, gather the recently dead of Bulgathos.
Absolutely not. Those were not demon-seduced cultists spitting blood and bile. Those were allies. Comrades. Better they deserve than to be fuel for ritual sacrifice.
I don't know. Zuli's got a point. If it ain't them, it's one of us.
So, you think we should force this sacrifice upon them?
No! No. I do agree with you. Just trying to think pragmatically.
I think at this moment we should lean more towards idealism than pragmatism.
Well said, War Matron.
Thus saying, I think it should be me.
Absolutely not. You've got all of Ascari counting on you.
Isn't that much more the reason to lay down my life for their futures?
Hells, it ought to be me. No one would even notice if one more Zanesu just sorta up and vanished.
Okay, now you know that's not true.
I'll do it.
No, brave Hakan. No. As a knight, as a paladin of mine people and faith both, this cut should belong to me.
And it will, good Geoffrey. It will. I get the easy way out, you see. Over, done. You have to take care of after. And I'm putting all that on you. On all of you. I trust you.
We will not let you down.
Bet on it.
If you are certain, I believe we have divined the necessary ritual.
Sir Druid, Hakan,
Shh. It's okay. I'll miss you too, buddy. It's been real.
Interesting.
My father always used to tell me that great kings were made in times of crisis. I'm not sure what I qualify as, but I don't think it's very great. Eastgate Keep ravaged, and the sightless march in shambles. Breadbasket for the whole of Condorus is struggling, with many dead, and more terrified to return. And the countryside just keeps getting worse. It's only been a couple of weeks, but already my knight captain swears the rate of crazed beasts is going up, not down. I've toured the region. The countryside is noticeably sick. Crops wither on the vine. Rotted tree stumps lay half fallen. With precious little alternative, I had reached out to the sisters. Auntie Akira had vowed to send anyone she could spare towards us as soon as she was able.
I was already in the area, as one of my fellow exiles had sent word down the pipeline about some corruption in the local flora and fauna. It took me a while to make my way here. Wasn't expecting to find this mess. I was sampling some of the corpses near some fortress place when I found a rather deadly crossbow poking me in the side.
Don't blame me for being cautious. Didn't have any demon taint. If I'd spotted that, he'd have been dead from 20 yards. But still, not often you see a perfectly normal-looking person very carefully and precisely eating pieces of a corpse. He explained to me that it was part of the ritual he performed, helping him to sample the person and what had killed them. He then helpfully shared a great deal of information he'd already gleaned about what had happened here.
I neglected to mention to the young huntress that I was considered an outcast even among the outcasts for my practices. They did work, though.
Young Vala brought the so-called witch doctor to me just in case, and fortunately so. I recognized his druidic talents immediately and sent the two off to the king as a goodwill gesture. The last thing we need at this point is to be expelled from the keep by the king.
I disliked speaking with nobility as a matter of practice, but as far as kings go, Albrecht was not the worst I'd seen. He informed us in quick order of the cathedral and its position as an artifact. Nazebo quickly asked who was sacrificed to its construction. To the king's credit, he was properly flummoxed by the question and had no real answer. But we were able to glean that the former vizier had been spotted nearby, and he suspected foul play in revenge for her excommunication.
Deadly Vala and I braved cold stone of the cathedral. There was no doubt this up close. Something was fundamentally wrong with the artifact itself. It was being poisoned actively by some tainted demonic energy. I was able to subdue several of the wild animals roaming the halls. Those poor creatures seemed lost and confused, and it was no real bother to purify their minds.
My job was much more enjoyable. There weren't many, but here and there I'd see cultists. Unlike my new comrade, they absolutely reeked of demonic filth. Cutting them down brought little slices of joy. But then we spotted something a bit off.
I wasn't doing particularly well. It was a simple task, really. Find my former ally, twist her lovely little head off, and purify the cathedral while prostrating myself before the boy king. Yet dear Adria was clearly more prepared than I, and worse, had far more loyal members of the cult still at her beck and call. And so I sat, awaiting my eventual, very gruesome ritual sacrifice to fuel the cathedral's conversion, when a druid and some kind of hunting enthusiast arrived. Clearly, things were all going according to plan.
The woman, dabbed with splotches of makeup unmaintained, sat bound with glowing chains and surrounded by glowing runes. My hunter's friend wanted to execute her, for she stank of demonic magic, but I held up a hand and spoke instead. After a fairly brief, surprisingly cordial discussion, we learned her identity as the former vizier, as well as we learned the true culprit within.
Fools! Bugs that crawl on slicked mud and think themselves masters of their pile of muck. Precious few faithful followed in screaming footsteps of true masters. When a rising tide of blood and nightmares finally fulfills our slow, steady gait, we submerge in joy, through rancid filth, to the lowest of the foul and rank. I will bow with brethren and dough to the peon of the bell and the murder of the hells.
Hello, Adria. It's been a while. Care to come home with me, or are we past that now?
You tried. Born to swallow shadow flood, your tears rain down on wings of blood, and in ends cause no further loss, but to scream and flail and scorn beloved.
Okay, she's cuckoo. Can we kill her?
Wait! Please just wait! Adria? Sister? I know how deep the rivulets go. We can help you. We can change you. We can change everything.
There is no help for me, butterfly. And I think you know that.
Let's get the hell out of here.
And go where?
Stifling heat and humidity sat poorly with me. Karazim and I had only intended to stay for a little while, so we were pleased to find temporary lodgings provided by the local lord. A delightful young woman tended the inn. Apparently it had been a gift. I didn't get the full details, just that she was connected to Lord Jaren somehow. None of my business, any road. She was good at what she did, and it was a good spot for it. She'd apparently only been here a little over a week, but had already settled in nicely. And given the Jewel of the Desert's position on so many major trade routes, she was like to have plenty to do.
Johanna groused at first. I'm a bit more accustomed to the open road than her, but, well, between the sounds and the wilds, I imagined a comfortable chair and a hot plate of feta were rather welcome. The innmaster spoke to us at length as Johanna rested her feet. She hadn't had much time for aspirations these last few years. Like myself, she kept more to the roads and settlements, mostly for safety, as apparently her uncles were on the run from something she felt hesitant to speak on. I didn't pry, of course, but rather found her outlook fascinating. As an ascetic, the only company I ever sought was my old friend, but this young woman adored meeting new people and seeing new places, and like Joanna, hated being on the road. The answer seemed simple. I imagine she found long nights spent scrubbing dishes and tabulating tolls sufficiently discouraging, but she shouldered the burden well. I listened politely as she regaled me with snippets of visitors she'd had just in the last few days. Sun-kissed shores and wet canopy ceilings, unbroken mounds for honored lords, a mist-drenched island, ribs of dead trees gasping for breath, and all other manner of tale. I really didn't get the appeal. Oh, the area sounded fascinating, but I'd rather actually visit. Commune with the local spirits, soak in the environment, maybe steal towards town to sample a local dish or two.
No thank you to all of that. I'm with her. Let travelers come to me with their tales, rather than me bumble my way through trying to explain just what color of green the trees were. Likewise, I get all the exercise and air I need when crushing my enemies. Why bother? Give me a settle in a dark ale and I'm quite content to let the people come to me.
Ah, this fine establishment should do nicely.
It's exposed.
And how fortunate no one is hunting us today. Come, Magda, surely you agree.
I've been to much worse. Do we really have time for this?
And the chairs are quite comfortable. Excuse me, handmaiden? Could I trouble you for a hot brewed tea, please? Ah, thanks much.
We don't have time for this. I'm not exactly sure where Bale is, but if we don't find him soon, we'll have bigger
We've
problems.
been on the road nonstop for 2 days
3
now.
days.
3 days now? And you're telling me you don't want to relax them feet for a bit?
I'm gonna go and attempt to find my contact. I'll try to return shortly.
You, think she's on the level?
She's no demon worshipper. I'll be back.
Yeah. Don't get seen now.
I'm sorry, forgive me for intruding, but did I hear you mention demons?
Why, yes. Knight of Kegistan. Heading home or heading out?
Neither, I guess. Me and a few of my comrades under Commander Aiden were dispatched around this area about 3 weeks ago for extended operations. The commander was going to visit Eastgate Keep to connect with the local march, though we haven't heard anything since. Me and my friend here were just on our way south to make for the pass and see what was up.
Ah, I see. I, may be able to save you a bit of a trip then.
Why? What happened?
Well, you see, it's been a busy couple of weeks.
Johanna's expression said everything, really. I held her for a bit while she worked through the worst of it, and the druid gave us a bit of space to gather ourselves. The kind innkeeper offered a fresh mug of spiced tea, which my friend held, unmoving, while the older man gave more details. I was not overly fond of anything I was hearing, but upon learning his purpose, my comrade's sentiment echoed my own.
We have to go with you.
Are you sure? We're walking into dens of monsters and demons both, scarce certain of what we find. This is not something to be taken lightly.
I said we'll go with you.
Well, far be it from me to tell you where to go or what to do. Ah, our comrades return with, Azan Isu, I believe?
Not quite. This is an old acquaintance of mine, and an old associate of the Zanasu. and I believe she can help point us in the right direction.
This whole situation was amazing. The timing lined up perfectly. I had only just arrived in Lutgolain. Scarce had I time to bestow baggage upon Bellhop before the butterfly witch found me. I'd be lying if I said I hadn't been looking forward to a comfortable pillow and a nice chai, but given circumstance, I could understand the desire to get on with all due haste. The quiet one, Karazim I think was his name, was quick to help with water and rest as we traveled. I got the impression this wasn't his first long trek through the desert. Fortunately, it wasn't my first dalliance with chaotic magics either. The desert was wrong. Warped, twisted down to the very weave. It was beautiful, really. But as the pieces of flora and fauna strewn across the glass basins proved, it was not for the timid. With care and consideration, we made our way to our destination, the source of the unusual magics that had first called me here from half a continent away. At first, I presumed another tomb on former sands, but as the Crusader and Huntress beckoned us further in, I quickly realized this was a laboratory, one of the better, more well-appointed ones I'd ever seen. There were Zanazu who would kill for such a facility such as this, and at least one I knew who had.
While the more scholarly of the group poked and prodded, I was ill at ease. There was something still alive in this place. I was sure of it. But it felt off. When I voiced my concerns, I was told it was likely a side effect of the devastation above. But I knew better. Quietly I stealthed away from my fellows, following my senses and intuition further past long hallways filled with arcane instrumentation, until at last the true defenders rose to fight me.
Fortunately, they were no match for the Huntress or myself, though I did nearly get a bolt in the eye for my troubles. I bowed, silent, but she seemed to accept, and we stole forward past further guards, unspeaking. The silence seemed to soothe my companion as it did myself, and after several smooth minutes of peaceful combat, we arrived at the source of our mutual concern. Though I confess, I was not sure upon what I looked.
The last few years had not been kind. I had discovered the flaw in the soulstones but a short while prior. Whoever put it there was quite clever, but not clever enough. For on the pattern design I saw another path, one that could absorb the four primal essences and channel them, and once channeled, harness. And once harnessed, well... but no. Ruling on high may interest upstarts like Sankakur, but I had more ambitious design. Properly channeled, such energy could be gathered for dispersal. Rather than ruling over ants as a god, I would stand shoulder to shoulder, equals, as we claimed our place on the fabric. I had completed the design some time ago and had begun entreaties into interested parties to try and deduce how and where to gather the necessary souls to power it, when to my surprise, it absorbed several all on its own. More tests. Apparently, I had underestimated my own genius, as it had dragged the souls in from beyond Sanctuary's barrier, something that I would ponder later. As for now, it was dangerously destabilized, something I admit I had foreseen, but did not have much control over, as the simplest way to restabilize it would be simply to balance the scales, and with no allies to call upon, and no resources to speak of, I had no choice but to bind it with myself, and hope no fools would release us without due cause.
The mage talked too much. Horodrim from his robe and demeanour. He demanded to know many things of me and my companion, and made such a din that we had barely had a chance to calm him down before the remainder of our party found us.
It was a bit chaotic, but Li Ming and I were able to calm the Horodrim and learn his tale. Between Nazeebo and the three of us, we are able to stabilize his black soulstone for transport, but he emphatically insisted the artifact was not responsible for the destabilization of the dunes.
Whatever the cause, we headed back. The more, learned among us were overeager to discuss and debate. Their enthusiasm was infectious, but I'm not skilled enough a liar to pretend I had any idea what they spoke of. Instead, I hung back a bit, drinking in the cold desert air. It sucked, but it helped keep my mind focused. When we got back to town, I swore to take a few moments and recoup at that nice lady's tavern. Though heaven help me if Karazim ever heard me say that. I respected my friend's choice of silence, but that just left the similarly taciturn huntress for company.
The Crusader made it maybe an hour before clumsily blurting out something. It was so garbled, I actually missed it at first, and asked her to speak more clearly. She was asking about me, my past, and why I channeled chaotic power. I considered, briefly, just ignoring her, but she was looking at me, and now the whole thing was awkward. I suppose not everyone is used to travelling quietly. I didn't mean to tell her that much, but after, I don't even know how long, the whole story had flown out. She was listening attentively. I kept expecting recriminations or condemnation, but she surprised me with her sympathy. She was weirdly easy to talk to. She shared some of her own story in turn. I got the impression she was a beast in combat, but not so great at people. But not like me. She never said it out loud, but I could tell she loved the company of others. Just had no idea how to deal with them. I made it a point to converse with her for the remainder of our journey. Not about anything in particular, just to keep her company. And I didn't fail to notice the monk's smile.
Dawn had already broke when we returned, and the guards were rather insistent we speak immediately with Lord Durin. As we approached, it wasn't hard to guess why.
My friends, I have been looking for you. I come bearing dire tidings. The great mountain of Ariat has need of heroes. We must sojourn there right away.
Can we at least rest a bit first?
My companions held the line for almost 2 days now, sleeping in shifts to ensure the rift never lacked for an eye upon it. But for all the pressure they felt, stemming the inconsistent tide of the wandering and the confused, I felt far more upon myself. One would think I could solve such a simple problem as closing a fabric rift, but this was no simple tear in the weave. The very nature of the world stone ensured its connection to all corners of the fabric, and wild though it currently raged, it was no surprise at the unusual denizens that periodically stumbled through.
The real issue here is we needed something to stabilize that damn thing. We had a decent amount of folk from a decent spread of walk, but we were lacking anchors to really hammer down the fabric. Imagine, if you will, a piece of cloth just billowing in the wind. Now, throw that idea out the window because it's stupid and just picture random portals popping up all over the fabric. We're lucky we were getting as few people as we were. Some occasional confused angels, some equally confused demons, and a few other things I didn't even recognize. We couldn't even send them back. Portals moved on by the time they're here. Too bad, so sad, enjoy Sanctuary. Sucks, really.
We weren't quite relieved at first to spot Tyrael, but he seemed disinterested in explanations about Ariel's absence. He carried with him an unusual crew. There were a few odd moments, but it quickly became apparent that this second party of adventurers were much like our own, and Tyrael had sought them out specifically to join them to our number. Certainly, Isandra seemed to immediately take to the wizard, and in short order, the mage types were all awakened and debating on how to deal with a blasted rift.
It was odd seeing a fellow Horadrim again, especially one not intent upon killing me. Cain was curt at first, and I did not blame him. My soul matrix was responsible for many of the horrors he'd lived through this past month. I felt especially bad for the loss of Jezrith. The world was lesser for his absence.
Unsure of what to do with myself, I drifted over towards the two Haradrim. After a bit of listening to the younger man's stories, I realized he was one of the uncles that the woman from the inn had spoken of. I didn't really mean to blurt that out the way I did, but...
Hearing that young Leah was pursuing her dream to some success was... I don't know. Some dark part of me kept waiting for word of her passing, or, given recent events worse, to know she was all right. That she was doing well. No words. No words.
Now seems a good a time as any.
Careful, everyone. We got a big one coming.
Leah?
Back Kane.
Oof. Impersonating family members. Oldest trick in the book. You've got nothing else?
What can I say? I'm a fan of the classics. Oh, do put those away before you get hurt. Do you not know who I am?
Belial, one of the four lords of hell.
Oh, so good to know that some of your simpering kind are aware of their betters. Fear not, I am a reasonable sort. I have big plans for this conduit. And I see gathered before me capability and competence. Submit. You will be offered much.
Return hence, demon. Thou shalt find thyself in like company if thou seekest.
Oh, forgive me. I didn't realize Moron spoke for you.
Ha! Well, I can't speak to his intellect, but I can stand on his principle. Now, I don't know you personally, but I know you think you're hot stuff. But right here, you got nothing.
You dare! I am a lord! I am master of hell! Bow! Bow!
Now, this may surprise you, but no one present was particularly inclined towards obsequience. Though I would be lying if I said the fight was easy. This was no usurper or non-combatant angel. This was a lord of hell. In private, I will say that if not for our combined strength, I do not think we would have bested the foe. It was difficult to describe. Layers of imagery shattering as his concentration waned. Illusions of sound and sight enveloping the whole of the peak. I made a quiet vow to magically remove my memories of that battle sometime later when I had a moment.
The Black Soulstone reacted instantly to the death of the fiend, taking his essence in and quickly destabilizing even further than it already was.
But the what? Blast it! You, and you. Help me stabilize this damned thing. I swear, if it has to absorb one more demon soul before I can balance out the refractive matrix, then this is going to go pretty badly, pretty fast.
Oh, come on!
A truly gifted tactician pushes his pawns forward first, letting them absorb the blows. For the noble elite might sweep what remains of their foes.
Actually, that's a pretty piss-poor way to play chess.
What?
Any moron knows pawns are useful in chess. They're some of the most important pieces. You've played chess before, right?
Behold, I come before you, the great terror of sin. And as I live and breathe, your mortal husk
Actually,
shall...
I don't think you qualify.
What?
She's got a point. You're a demon. You don't breathe. Pretty sure you're about to not be alive either.
Enough! I am a lord of hell! I claimed this post from Balester Breaker himself. you will show me the respect I'm due. You will bow, and you will bow before.
I thought he'd never shut up.
Iswal? We thought we lost you to the hells!
Good. A pencil pusher. No, while you were off doing whatever it is you do, I was busy holding the line without reinforcements or aid for nigh unto a decade.
What of Imperius?
General Imperius died some years ago in an ambush, led by Dariel.
A pity to be true, but how are you here?
Well, ever since the barrier dropped, the forces of hell have been shuffling around, and me and my personal retinue here decided to follow these two fellspawn in their maneuverings. I have to admit, felling two lords felt good, but it won't last. We need to strike hard and fast while we still can.
I'm sorry, forgive me. What do you mean?
Who are you?
Deckard Cain. Herodric Sage.
Angelic puppetry, excellent. Well, then you'll be glad to know that I have decided that we are going to widen this rift behind me here, take control of it, and use it as a staging point to send lightning strikes into the burning hells.
What? No. Do you have any idea what that would mean?
An end to the demons?
No, you sod-witted brain blocker. All that will do is turn Sanctuary into another battlefield for the Sin War.
Worse, it'd make the Sin War permanent. Right now the sides only clash when a realm connects the two, but with that permanent path, the war'd be on full time.
And all our homes and families would just be fodder for your war.
I'm sorry, I don't really see the issue. We are fighting to get rid of evil here.
Shut up.
Pardon?
I would have made a damned good baker.
This is absurd. You cannot stop me.
Now, I don't want to brag or nothing, but as it happened, we absolutely could stop him. Felt weird raising a hand against an angel, but honestly, screw that guy. Of course, now the Black Soulstone took in his soul, which apparently helped a bit. I don't know the particulars. But at this point, Tyrael was talking about mobilizing our respective orders, gathering and mustering for the inevitable counterattack from heaven, and at this a few of us balked.
I will admit, politics isn't exactly my forte, but a few of the more learned present started talking our options out. Flat out war with heaven? Despite what Tyrael was saying, completely off the table. Even though they'd lost their home army, they weren't exactly lacking for numbers of recruits. Hells? Same problem. Years of guerrilla fighting had weakened them, but not enough for us to matter. Then there's the thing nobody really wanted to say out loud.
Just because we were exemplars of our orders, honed and trained in combat and capable against foes beyond our ken, doesn't mean the rest of our fellows are. Even if all of our orders' fighting forces were to combine, alongside the nation's remaining, which I was told recently aren't doing so well right now, that's just one semi-capable army. I think Kakul put it best.
Even if each of us were to fell 100 angels or 500 demons before we were brought down, they can replace those hundreds with thousands. We can't. No, our best bet is to go quiet. That butterfly witch lady asked about the Black Soulstone to help even the scales, to which I explained the Black Soulstone was but a prototype, intended for testing purposes only, not large-scale implementation, to see what could be done with one soul and one human, and then maybe move forwards. We just were not ready. We needed time.
As gathered allies debated, I saw Zool turn to me. His face betrayed nothing, as it always had, but I sensed in that moment I was losing my greatest supporter. And if he could be convinced, there was no doubt about the others. In minutes I went from being ready to unveil and pursue our ultimate plan to questioning the allegiance of my very friends. I was unsure of how to proceed. Thankfully, an old colleague arrived and I was given precious time to process.
I had been studying Sanctuary's nature and progress for the past month intensely. The anchors being removed so suddenly threw me, but many of my theories suddenly made much more sense. Demonic human artifacts, of course! Then the barrier went down. That was a bit unexpected. All movement halted, and there was something causing absolute havoc across the entire fabric. It took a little to narrow the source of that down, as this rift was like a beacon to those learned in fabric's weave. One of the rather scholarly Heraldric sages and I discussed the problem at length, and we both agreed the rift needed to be dealt with now, before the situation got worse. But my human companion's attention seemed elsewhere.
Joanna's tale of Leah had jolted a thought loose, and I was able to puzzle through it with Malthael's help. Closing the rift permanently may be possible at some point, but what was truly needed now was simply to get the thing under control. I asked my comrades to gather forth, representatives of all aspects of Sanctuary's weave, a fellow Heraldric sage, a crusader of light, a witch of demonology, a huntress who channeled chaos, a wise man who practiced druidism, an ascetic of balance, a wizard of chaos, a priest of Rathma steeped in death, a practiced assassin, a skilled sorceress of the weave, a strong paladin of Zakharum, and a veteran war matron of the Isles. Each soul connected to a specific point on the fabric, literal and metaphysical, giving me the targets for anchoring the ritual's power. And with Jezrith's cube, I was able to produce the focus we needed. It took a great deal out of me, but thoughts of a warm hearth and my smiling child pushed me through it. At length, at last, the rift stabilized. Malthael was impressed, and the two of us began conversing about its function and operation when Tyrael came over. I'm not entirely sure what happened next.
What the fuck? I can't believe him. I'm not even sure what he's thinking at this point. I get that the plan failed, but surely there's ways to take a moment, think, and work our way through things instead of whatever the hell that was. Good news was tracking down 2 archangels was just about as easy as tracking the Black Soulstone, so we were a little spoiled for choice in how to find him. Downside was none of us were quite certain how to operate the now stabilized rift. Senna and the wizard felt like they could deal with that part of things at least.
This wasn't part of the plan. The others were busying themselves with tracking down the rogue angel and rescuing Cain and I couldn't blame them. I had already lost my sister to this nonsense. And in private, I'll admit my faith was wavering.
I didn't know Cain much, honestly. Oh, I knew him professionally, one of the few fellow sages who had earned my respect. His work on the World Stone was impressive, to say the least. The man had talent, that's for sure. If nothing else, losing him would be a legitimate loss for humanity.
I should have seen it coming. Angels are incredibly predictable, usually, and this one evaded my senses. Somehow. Even that prick Iswal made sense, but Tyrael? I suppose if the point had been to focus humanity's resistance on one centralized spot to crush. But what would be the purpose of that? The older sage was right. Humanity just cannot stand against Hell's bulwarks. Yet.
This is all a mess. Worse, I got a pretty bad feeling about how it's gonna go. What I'm not sure about is the why. Why bother with the whole charade? Things smacks of improv, last minute. Maybe angels aren't so good at thinking on their feet. I will say, though, anything happened to that Deckard fellow, I'm not looking forward to telling his niece about it. Last thing she needs in all this.
None of this made any sense. Why would an Archangel of the High Heavens attack unprovoked? And why do it in such a face-palming way? If he'd wanted us dead, he probably could have just waited until the night after the party we were already planning. I make a good bee sting cake and was looking forward to sharing it with my new friends.
My friend was taking this particularly hard, and I gave her shoulder a squeeze to remind her I was still there. It's funny. I'm fairly certain I've only ever said one word to her in our time together. My name. But she knew I had her back. I suppose there's not much more that I can ask for than that.
It was less trouble than I'd thought it'd be to control the rift. Though once through, we'd be stranded at the other end, also leaving the rift completely undefended in our absence. I thought to mention this to my allies, but I doubt it would have changed anything, so I kept my silence. What really worried me was the Black Soulstone. An unproven artifact prototype is already problematic enough. Though I wonder what souls Soltun Kul had planned to sacrifice for his intended future projects. I'll be keeping an eye on him from now on.
I'm tired. I'm so tired. I don't know. I don't know if I did the right thing or not. I'm not sure I ever will. Guess that's part of the bargain.
With Li Ming's help, we were able to get the rift going pretty easy-like. The real question is going to be, do we wait to recoup or head straight out? Everyone seemed all contemplative, like, I never got that, really. Life happens. You do. If you don't do, life still happens. No sense in sitting and pondering.
Hakan would have seen it coming. Would have stopped Sir Kane from capture. All I could do was gape and paw.
It was time. Whatever happens next happens for Kane and for ourselves. The details will have to sort themselves out later. We stepped into the rift and found ourselves someplace I admit I did not expect.
Whatever Tyrael's plan was, he clearly wanted it to hit as much of the fabric as possible. He'd done something to the artifact, I could tell even at a distance. But before we could do more than take in our surroundings, he slew the bound Malthael, whose essence poured into the Black Soulstone.
You idiot! You have no idea what you're tampering with!
I know exactly what I'm doing, and if you seek to stop me, I suggest you prove it. The rest is now up to you. I'm sorry.
I was unsure of the why, but I knew exactly what I beheld. The Archangel had altered the Black Soulstone with the Herodric Cube, and so once it did what it was meant to do, it shuddered violently and then shattered. Any with the practice to see could sense the patterns of the 4 primal magics pouring out across the fabric. I could not see how far they weaved, but I would be surprised if it did not at least encompass all of Sanctuary. In the next few weeks, as things finally seemed to settle, we found the realm now had a permanent connection to both the burning hells and the high heavens, and people were different. We weren't sure how yet. We weren't sure of much of anything.
Oh, it couldn't have been that long ago when I first found the new realm.
While not exactly according to plan, my beloved's ideals bore fruit. The black soulstone did as intended, spreading across the rich weave of cultures and disparate lands. A delight to be savored, of course, but bittersweet the taste. And now, we had a great deal of work to do.